The first night I heard the tapping was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I can't say for certain, because it only happens at night, and I wasn't at first even sure it was real, because it would stop the moment I woke up. It seemed for a while that the tapping at my bedroom window existed only in the ethereal dimension between sleep and wakefulness, the point where you can remember your dreams so vividly, but trying to hold on to them is like trying to hold water in your fist. There were 3 taps, all together. Tap, tap, tap. It could have been a tree, but there are no trees outside my bedroom window. It could have been a neighbour, but my bedroom is on the 2nd floor. It could have been a bird, or a large moth perhaps, but it was always 3 sets of 3 taps. Succinct. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. I would hear them in my sleep, and they would pull me from my dreams, but it would only be until the 3rd tap, tap, tap that I would actually wake up, and my mind would clear enough to wonder what had awoken me to begin with. I thought absolutely nothing of this at first. I wasn't even convinced that I was hearing anything at all. It was intermittent, only happening 2 or 3 times in the course of a week. It wasn't until I realised I had been waking up every night at precisely 3 minutes past 3 in the morning that I even noticed any semblance of a pattern. Something with that kind of timing surely had to be automated somehow, right? Maybe a thermostat was turning on, or there was no water in the pipes in the wall that I was just mistaking for a tap at the window. Really, there was no way for me to tell at all where the sound was coming from, because it only happened when I was asleep. So, naturally, I decided to stay up and see for myself. I brewed a pot of coffee and turned on some junk TV. At about 10 minutes to 3, I shut off the television and waited. 10 minutes later, at exactly 3 in the morning, I heard a tap 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 at my window. There was no mistaking it now. It sounded just like someone tapping on the glass. Had I not been on the 2nd floor, I would have expected to see someone standing there on the other side of the window, asking to be let in. Except, of course, no one was on the other side of the glass. I stood from my bed and crossed the room, listening closely for the 2nd set of tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I nearly leapt out of my skin, even though I was expecting it. The tapping seemed to be right in the centre of the glass, where there was absolutely nobody there to tap. I extended my finger and tapped the glass myself 3 times, just like the sound I was hearing. It was almost identical. There was a hollower note to mine, but if my fingernail were perhaps a bit longer, the sound would have been exact. Immediately following my tap was a loud pounding that rattled the window. Bang, bang, bang. I leapt back, a scream of surprise leaping out of my throat. I stood in my bedroom for a second, not knowing what to do, because that was the exact sound I would expect to hear if someone were pounding their fists against the window. Except I was standing there, seeing nothing but the night sky through the glass. I didn't get much sleep that night. I went to call the police, but only hovered my thumb over the call button because I knew I wouldn't be taken seriously. Hell, I wouldn't take it seriously either. The next several nights were almost as sleepless, although the tapping had stopped for reasons unbeknownst to me. I was beginning to think I'd exaggerated the banging in my mind because of all the caffeine I'd had in my system that night. Or maybe my tapping on the other side of the glass had shaken something loose, or realigned the window frame to fix the unseen issue. A part of me knew, though, that was just the saner facilities trying to make logical sense of the illogical. It had been nearly 3 weeks since that night, and I'd finally put it out of my mind. Although most nights I still woke up a few minutes past 3, I figured that was my circadian rhythm, and eventually I'd start sleeping through the night again. That was, until last night. It was the hottest day in recorded history this month, and my swamp cooler wasn't cutting it. Once the sun went down, it got easier, but it was still too hot to sleep. I didn't even think twice about opening my window to try to cool off. When the tapping started again, it didn't take 3 to wake me up. My eyes flew open the second the first set had started. I looked at the window, wide open just as I'd left it, and felt my stomach turn to stone. The fear from the other night was back in full force, and all I could remember was the sound of the pounding against the window. The sound of fists beating against the glass as if someone were demanding to be let in. Tap, tap, tap. My eyes slowly lifted. The tapping wasn't at the window this time. It was in the closet. My heart pounded as I ran through scenarios in my head and waited anxiously for the third set of taps. I was filled with a childlike fear I hadn't felt in over 20 years. It was the kind of fear that keeps children safe, the prehistoric instinct innate within prey but forgotten by many species who have worked their way up to the top of the food chain over the centuries. It was an absolute certainty that there was something on the other side of that closet door, despite my rational explanation. But the third set of taps never came. I waited for an hour, maybe longer, to hear anything else happen, staring intently at the closet door, too terrified to investigate in the dark. I heard nothing but the hum of the swamp cooler and the distant traffic outside the window. I awoke the next morning with a jolt, first remembering everything that happened last night, then wondering how long it had been before I fell asleep. But with daylight also comes the logic that seldom prevails in the dark. If there was in fact a sound in the closet, that was something I could actually look into. Maybe I was right at first, and it was something to do with the air vent or the plumbing. I got out of bed and opened the closet door, feeling silly for being so afraid last night. Clothes hung neatly on their hangers, my shoes lay in a pile on the floor, and a few boxes of memorabilia from my childhood sat atop the shelf. Absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. Knowing I would hate myself tonight if I didn't investigate further, I began to pull everything out of the closet. I'd been meaning to go through it anyway, I told myself. With the contents of my closet now strewn across the room, I began to inspect the walls of the closet. I tapped along each wall, then the ceiling, then the door, trying to replicate the sound. It had sounded like the tapping was coming from the closet door, and the sound I made when I tapped it was close, but not exact, even if I conceded again that my fingernails were too short to replicate the sound perfectly. I was just about to start putting things away when I had a thought. The closet door had been closed. I reached out and pulled the door closed. Last night, I would have paid everything I had in my savings account to not stand where I was this morning. But as I closed the door, I felt absolutely nothing but scientific curiosity. No fear whatsoever. I tapped 3 times, and sure enough, the sound was as perfect as I could get it without longer fingernails. For a moment, I recalled my experiment a few weeks ago, and how I'd been rewarded with a loud, terrifying banging noise, and was suddenly struck by the fear that it would happen again. But nothing came. I opened the door and stepped out of the closet, feeling a little vindication from having produced the sound, but also baffled by the fact I still didn't know what was making it. I began to clean up the mess I'd made, putting the contents of my closet back in their place and making sure that with every item I put in, there was no chance it could be the culprit of the noise. All I had left were the boxes of memorabilia. One held old sports medals, favourite toys and the like, and the other was filled with pictures, letters, and a few more personal artefacts. Not being able to control my nostalgia, I opened the first box and pulled out a few items. I smiled as I did this, feeling the sweet, warm embrace of my childhood long past. Soccer medals, baseball cards, Mickey Mouse ears, all brought back sweet memories and pushed away any anxiety I'd felt the night before. I opened the next box and found something peculiar at the top. Something I knew I hadn't put there. On the left was a picture I'd seen before. It was a picture of me from my first 4th of July, wearing a popsicle grin and very little else. I would have been almost 6 months old when that photo was taken. But that picture was from one of the albums at the bottom of the box, and I knew I'd never taken it out. On the right was a picture I'd never seen before. It was a photo of a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The picture didn't have any date on it, but the burnt orange wallpaper and olive green carpet made me think it was something from the 70s. On the back, in the bottom left corner, a single name was written: Abby. I have no idea how the picture got there, I'm certain I don't know anyone by that name, and that box hasn't been touched in a while, maybe a year or more. For all I knew, that picture could have just been placed there by my first girlfriend, who broke up with me by sleeping with a bartender just over a year and a half ago. She was always a bit on the crazy side anyway. I returned the picture of me to the photo album where it belonged, next to another photo of me standing next to a little girl holding the first fish I'd ever caught, and set the photo of Abby on my nightstand. After a minute or so, I superstitiously moved the photo to the wastebasket. There was no reason to keep that picture. I was certain I had no idea who Abby was anyway. I put the box back at the top of the closet and went about the rest of my day, doing everything I could to force the paranoia out of my mind.